The information presented in this video is certainly the stuff of science fiction. But the question is there or has there ever been science fiction? Could it be that the science fiction writers of yesteryear and today are simply in the know of future plans of suppressed technology now in the hands of certain secretive agencies? Famous science fiction writers of the past, such as Robert Heinlein, H.G. Wells, and Aldous Huxley, were certainly insiders that might have known the intricacies of what the true state of science fact was. Did these science fiction writers from the past, or science fiction producers of the present day like George Lucas or Steven Spielberg, simply relate, in a fictional format, science or future plans hidden from the general public, and pass it off as fantasy? Answers to these questions and many others might come from the research done and comments made by Alfred Lamberman Weber. Dr. Weber is a graduate of Yale University and Yale Law School in International Law, and was a Fulbright Scholar in International Economic Integration in Uruguay. He's taught economics at Yale University and constitutional law at the University of Texas. Alfred was general counsel to the New York City Environmental Protection Administration, a futurist at Stanford Research Institute, incidentally where he directed the proposed 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communications study. Alfred was also an NGO delegate to the United Nations and the Unispace Conference, and is a judge on the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal. Dr. Weber is also the author of Exopolitics, Politics, Government, and Law in the Universe, a book that founded the field of exopolitics, which is the science of relations among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse. On an interview done for Volcano Radio, Alfred discusses the realities of time travel.
I know that these are kind of hard concepts to explain, so I hope that I can. One of my tasks has been to report, and in some part to be what we call enmeshed in the secret time travel and teleportation programs of the United States and what I would really call the matrix government of the planet. And they have operated on the basis of using secret time travel and teleportation technology to govern the planet politically for at least the last 40 years. And people can go to exopolitics.com, and on the right-hand menu, there's a link that says time travel and teleportation, and click there, and you'll see a whole raft of links to articles that explain this and give all of the sources. Articles like Time Travel and Political Control that explain how the matrix authorities that have control of time travel technology travel to the future, obtain information, and then control us politically on the basis of that information by pre-identifying future presidents, prime ministers, and then co-opting them 20 years in advance and then grooming them as secret CIA or secret MI5 or MI6 operatives, so that what you think is a president or a prime minister is really almost a lifelong operative. What occurred to me is that in real time, in 1999, I wrote a book called Exopolitics, which established the science of exopolitics, which is the science of relations among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse. And it was published in the year 2005. Well, what occurred, unknown to me, was that the CIA and DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, time traveled that book from at least 2005 back to at least 1971. And I was told this in 2005 by a project participant in the secret time travel project who had seen it in 1971 in person, Lieutenant Commander Andrew D. Basiago in the U.S. Navy. And so in 1971, at the time that it was time traveled back to, and that this whistleblower had seen it, I was general counsel of the Environmental Protection Administration of New York City. And part of my job was to speak to the public in New York about protecting the environment, the air quality, water quality, noise abatement, things of this sort. And one day I was asked to speak at this organization. I said, fine. And what was different about it is when the person came to pick me up, he was not a student or a housewife that tended to be the environmentalist. He was a man dressed in a suit and very formal. And we traveled for about 2 hours, and I arrived at this nondescript office building, and there were 50 other men in suits. And I instantly knew through my double vision that these were not environmentalists. These looked like government operatives. These looked like
spooks, we call them. Spooks. Yeah.
So I kind of stayed in character and gave my standard environmental stump speech, but they were sort of smirking at me, and I could tell that they knew about something about me that I didn't know, and that they were surveying me, and a number of them were smirking at me, trying to get me off game. But I just, soldiered on, and at the end of it, they applauded me and gave me a mug, which I brought back to my office. It said Delaware Valley Industrial Engineering Association. Now, I searched for that, and no such association exists. So, in 2005, Andrew D. Basiago told me this, and we both put together that was a room full of CIA and Department of Defense officials who had my book that they had time traveled back from 2005. They may also have been carrying out real-time time travel surveillance on me, either by Chronovisor, which is like either a 2D or 3D television screen, which they tune into any time-space coordinates, A, B, C, D, E, and they just tune in and they just follow what you're doing. They had been surveying me in time and space in the future, and they knew that I would be in the future revealing many of their state secrets.
Now, here's the question for you based on that, and I won't interrupt you too many times, but it might have some sort of adverse effect on events to come. Is it risky? Was it risky by them to do that?
There are certain constraints of what we call time science, and so all of their technology and all of the movements have to operate within the rules of time science. And so that's how the time science, that's how all of the time travel systems operate within the constraints of time science, so as not to be a disruptive force. And that's one of the principal reasons why this technology has to be made public and brought under public controls, because otherwise it could be turned, as you just suggested, into a weapon.
Of course, because you could, there are financial things you could do. You could go back and you could speculate on certain things because you know what's happening in the markets. At the very least, you could go back and start betting on NBA championships and Super Bowl championships and all sorts of stuff like that, and enhance yourself in the future, Alfred. It's got amazing implications,
Yes. One of the I've spoken to at least 6 whistleblowers from the top secret U.S. time travel and teleportation program, one of whom was a U.S. presidential advisor to a president, and he's an extraordinary man. And what he told me, for example, was that the reason why U.S. President Nixon was taken out of office, the kind of the cover story was Watergate, but it was because he was objecting to all of the excesses and financial speculation and money laundering that personnel and factions within the CIA were using in the time travel and teleportation program in secret. And that's why the CIA set him up in Watergate and took him out. So that's some of the behind the scenes history that is very much different from what we're fed in public.
And I must just mention now, in case some of our listeners want teleportation, it's the idea is that I can walk through a door here in Manchester and instantaneously come out another door in Florida, right alongside Alfred, basically. That's the essence, is it, or am I wrong in saying that?
Well, it would be about 3 or 4 minutes, or maybe less. But that's the basic idea. Those of us here, as a matter of public policy, and this would have happened. And in fact, one of my colleagues, again, the whistleblower Andrew D. Basiago, one of his jobs in the program back in 1971 was to routinely go to a DARPA forward time base in the year 2045. We're now in 2014. But by 2045, teleportation along that timeline was a fairly common thing. This has many advantages. Number one, it eliminates all forms of pollution from fossil fuel. Right now, we're pushing around 4,000 pounds of steel that you wrap around your waist in order to go to the corner to pick up a bottle of milk. So that is one of the most inefficient forms of transportation around. Plus, you've got all of the concrete in roads, in highways, all of the land use in trains. Jane Jacobs writes about how all of the cities have been destroyed by rail yards and by highways and overpasses. So by switching out of the fossil fuel and intercombustion world, we move away from this gross misuse of land use and polluting technology to a non-polluting technology. And we bring back to life all of the inner cities. He said that the teleportation units were built into the walls, and you would go up to a wall, dial up to where you wanted to go, and then you would be taken there. This is a goal that we are pushing now for the release of these teleportation technologies and to move beyond the fossil fuel world. And the only reason that they're not is that Donald H. Rumsfeld, back in 1971-72, who was a member of the Richard Nixon cabinet, as well as Henry Kissinger, who was the national security advisor, said that this is going to maintain a military secret so that the United States can deliver its troops to the battlefield by teleportation anywhere around the world it wants to.
Alfred, I was coming to that. I was just going to say that to you. That would be one of the most important applications for them, wouldn't it? That's all they would think about. Yeah, we can get armies overseas in 4 minutes. Bang. Yeah.
And this would virtually transform our world into a paradise planet. You would no longer have oil wars. You would get rid of a major source of pollution, which is fossil fuel. Look at what China's bringing online now with the coal, with all of these new energy sources that are what we call quantum access. This is accessing the quantum of energy of these new Tesla-based energy sources. And there's no reason for these military intelligence agencies to hang on to these secrets, which they have for over 40 years, because it's killing the planet and it's killing humanity. And there are minority factions that want to do that, want to kill the surface dwelling humans, they call them surface dwellers, and then supplant the surface dwellers with a gene pool Mars colony that they've been developing on Mars of elite humans with superior DNA that they'll just bring on after they've gotten rid of us all surface dwellers. And I think that just yesterday, a woman came forward with a leak. She was a former NASA employee who saw back in 1979 a person walking around on Mars. Of course, the U.S. and the UK have had bases on Mars and personnel on Mars at the elite level since at least the 1960s.
Alfred characterizes a control system striving through all means possible to maintain its hold over humanity. These controllers appear to be using technology far beyond that which the average human conceives as possible. In considering such notions that stretch our reality, it's important not only to consider the source and the information, but also take into account the confined nature of what we've been taught is possible. Taught incidentally by the control system itself. Could it be that we've been trapped in a matrix reality constructed to limit our conceptualization of what's possible? Could this have been done to elicit an automatic reaction of disbelief to any data that conflicts with the reality taught in schools and then reinforced by the media? Is science fiction a mechanism to categorize ideas into what is fact and what is fantasy? Could it be an instrument designed to teach us what to believe and what to disbelieve, thereby enabling the controllers to hide advanced technology which they use to maintain control, and then hide it in plain sight? Certainly we are schooled to the notion that we live in a physical reality, governed by the laws of Newtonian science. But this notion defines a particularly rigid set of parameters for what is feasible, for what is real. Cemented in the notion of physicality, we are incapable of grasping anything outside of a seemingly material world. Could this be the controller's greatest tool of suppression? Denying us the knowledge of who we are, what we are, and the rules that govern the omniverse? This confines us in a prison without bars, a narrow range of possibilities outside of which the controllers can operate with impunity. Without being able to break free from the stunted vision of what's achievable, we remain ensnared in a slave-like existence, subject to the horrors, isolation, separation, wars, and limitations which they choose for us. Later in the interview, Dr. Weber reconceptualizes a reality in which many more possibilities abound, and perhaps freedom from the matrix can be found.
Is time a construct?
Well, it's a dimension. We now live in what's called a time-space hologram. We are inside a virtual reality. It's like if we're inside the virtual reality that you yourself would watch through a pair of Google glasses. And people can read my most recent book called The Dimensional Ecology of the Omniverse. It's the product of 5 years research that was started by a request from Oxford University Press, which is a division of Oxford. And it's perfectly scientifically, all of the evidence there is based on replicable scientific experiments. What we are in now, yourself as Richie, myself as Alfred, we can call ourselves avatars. All of us humans, all of those listening to this program, all of us 7 billion on this planet, what we are is we are time-space avatars inside of a time-space virtual reality that's a time-space hologram where time is one of the dimensions. It's composed of multiple timelines. The good news is this, that as of December 21st, 2012, the holographic timeline that humanity has been on has shifted from, I would call, a duality consciousness-based timeline, in which you can call a catastrophic timeline, to a positive timeline. And that's why all these end-of-the-world scenarios have not occurred, and why all the false flags that they're trying to get off the ground, like World War III, they don't have traction for, because as of December 21st, 2012, the portal, the interdimensional portal at the core of our universe has started to broadcast waves of unity consciousness, which is we are one. Duality consciousness is I win, you lose. And that's what the matrix has been operating under. And as of December 21st, 2012, is shifted to unity consciousness. So any plans, organization, attempts, thoughts, that are trying to impose duality consciousness will not prosper. And individuals, thoughts, organizations that are in unity consciousness gain traction on this new holographic timeline. The other good news is that this being a virtual reality, and I being the avatar Alfred, you being the avatar Richie, we have our 7 billion fellow avatars here. Each of us is connected to a non-local soul, which is based in what we call the interlife dimension. That soul can be leading multiple lives in multiple virtual realities, not only as humans, but they can be leading it as intelligent fish or other forms. So this is a very advanced form. And what souls do in the interlife, also between lives, is that they have very important functions co-creating the universes that they incarnate into. There's a recent paper by 2 scientists at Stanford showing that they were asked how many universes are there in the multiverse, and the response was, there are so many, it's humongous, and the human mind can't even comprehend. But if you went to write that number out in 12-point type, that number would be more than 260 million miles long.
Wow,
that's many universes there are in the multiverse. So we are in a humongous reality, each of which contains so many intelligent civilizations that we couldn't comprehend how many. Basically, this is a spiritual, I would call it a struggle or a war between matrix forces who want to keep as many souls from moving up in density of consciousness, from being trapped in, let's say, lower third density where they are now, and moving up the ladder of consciousness where they would no longer be subject to. And so money was actually invented as a form of control. It's a form of control that if you research it, it goes back to the temples of Babylon and even before, where it was used by the Mardukian priests where they would require it as payment for sex with the temple priestesses / prostitutes, where the farmers would bring in their grain. And so it's been mixed up with concepts of God, sex, money, prostitution, and it's a form of imprisonment. And as we know from near-death experiences, one can't take money with you. You can't take things with you. All you can take with you is knowledge and experience and karma.
Yeah.
So that's where one should concentrate one's energy during life. You see, at this time is the coming together of spirituality and science. And this is kind of the culmination of this play, right? Because we are on a timeline that has a script. We're inside a virtual reality. To put it simply plainly, we're inside a video game. It's like you came in, you have your pound or, whatever it is, and you put it in there and you're playing the video game called life, right? And now we're coming to the culmination of that video game. And at the video game, everybody gets to know everything.
Yeah.
So one of the purposes that I wrote Omniverse now is that it uses science and it lets everybody know everything. So it's all out there. It's all there to be known now. There are no, see, with the new timeline, with the new unity consciousness, the old program of I win, you lose, which is what the Illuminati banked on under the old game. What happened is that on December 21st, 2012, they changed video games. Well, look, everybody who has incarnated now actually signed on for this. They fought for these places. So now, why it's so difficult is because they're competing with their own soul, within their own consciousness and minds, between the grasp of the Illuminati program, which is, listen to us, sensation program, war, disease, crime, and poverty, sex sells, materialism, fear, and they're just trying to let go within themselves of the programming of the old timeline and just try, Armageddon is within. So they signed up for this, and it's their inner process. And so that's what makes it so neat.
You know what? I've been around for a while. I've traveled the world, met some interesting people, done some crazy things. So you might just think there's not much that could take me by surprise. You'd be wrong. The world is full of stories and science and things that amaze and confound me every single day. Incredible mysteries that keep me awake at night. Some I can answer. Others just defy logic.
Can people move from the present into the past or future? Eyewitnesses report a woman materializing from thin air. Could she be a time traveler? An ancient stone structure suggests the incredible. Did ancient pagan worshippers practice human sacrifice in New Hampshire? Plants seem to possess strange powers, allowing them to detect human thought. Are they sentient beings with dark intent?
Yep. It's a weird world. And I love it. One minute. I'm sorry, I couldn't put this book down, The Time Machine, written in 1895 by H.G. Wells. With this one book, a hot new science fiction genre was born, the time travel story. Now, of course, there are endless books, and films, and TV shows on the subject, and the mind-boggling paradoxes of journeying across time. Great stuff. Shame the concept of time travel is just fiction, isn't it?
On July 15th, 2006, famed science fiction author Whitley Strieber, best known for his books The Hunger and Communion, was out at the theater with his wife Anne and her friend Starfire Tor. Little did they know what would happen that night would rival anything found in Whitley's books.
Nothing seems impossible to me anymore. I haven't talked about it very much,
After dinner, Anne and her friend went into what they thought was an empty ladies' room.
Well, it's a very small room, about 10 by 12. There was nobody in that room except for Anne Strieber and myself.
So I was standing on these steps. No one went in it after the two of them went in it. And I was watching the entire time.
Anne was a little bit before me, and she left and said she would wait for me outside.
So I went outside, stood in front of the door, waiting for Starfire.
As I slightly rounded the corner, coming out of the stall, a woman just materialized.
Whoa!
She didn't seem to understand where she was. She seemed confused, and then she just left the room.
While I was standing there, a woman came out.
I go out the door to the ladies' room, and Anne Strieber rushes up to me, very, very excited. She says, "A lady came out, but she didn't go in. A lady came out, but she didn't go in."
This was pretty amazing because we knew no one was in there when we went in. So how could someone have come out who was never in there in the first place?
No one, absolutely no one, went in that bathroom.
Who was this mysterious woman? And how could she have appeared from nowhere? For the eyewitnesses, this is no ghost story. For them, the answer is much weirder.
Something altered the timelines. We were brought together like a bad edit of a film, and that's how we almost collided.
Right. Two women go into an empty bathroom and three women come out. Is it really possible this mystery woman slipped through from another time? Is that weird or what? I'd say that's the weirdest. Weird or what yet.
Yeah, it's pretty far out, but remarkably, time travel may indeed be possible. And proof could soon be found in a 17-mile tunnel deep underground at the border of France and Switzerland. This is the Large Hadron Collider, a 17-mile-long tunnel designed to smash atoms together in an attempt to recreate conditions that last existed just before the Big Bang, when the universe was less than a trillionth of a second old. Scientists at the LHC are trying to understand what happened in that critical moment to make our universe what it is. By solving this, they hope to shed light on some of the most fundamental unanswered questions in physics.
With the Large Hadron Collider, perhaps one day we'll be able to answer these cosmic questions. What happened before the Big Bang? Is it possible to go through a black hole? Can you bend time into a pretzel? We're now entering the cusp of human progress. 100 years ago, think how primitive we are. 100 years from now, think of how advanced computers, artificial intelligence will be. Right now, we're at the most interesting point in human history, the cusp, when we're going to rocket through the universe.
A complete understanding of how the entire universe is really constructed might enable future physicists to find a way to manipulate the fabric of space-time itself and travel into the past or future. But can we really manipulate time? To find out, we first need to investigate time itself. Isaac Newton imagined time as an arrow, always traveling straight forward in one direction. But then Albert Einstein came along and said that time is more like a river that can meander, flow at different speeds, and even eddy back upon itself.
Now we look at a river and we think of the spot on the river where we are is something like the present moment. And then upstream from us is the future. This is coming towards us. It's relentless. It's sort of inevitable. In a moment, what was up there is going to be here. And downstream from us, we can think of as the past. So these are events that have already happened. So there you have it. You've got the future, you've got the present moment, you've got the past.
Is it possible to go against the flow of time into the future? Or move even further downstream into the past?
Going back in time is simple, theoretically. All we need to do is beat light to its destination, travel faster than light speed. How fast is that? Well, as Albert Einstein
figured out light travels at a fixed and constant speed throughout the universe of 186,000 miles per second. And the space shuttle can travel around 5 miles per second, so we have a bit of a problem. But our hopes of meeting our ancestors aren't over yet. Modern physicists have built on Einstein's theories and discovered that although we may not be able to beat light in a head-to-head race, we might be able to cheat and take a shortcut. Going back in time is simple, theoretically. To do this, a time traveler would need to bend the fabric of space, connecting two distant points to create a theoretical tunnel through space and time known as a wormhole.
There are two parallel universes. Perhaps it might be possible to build a gateway between these universes, a wormhole, a shortcut, like the looking glass of Alice. Think of Alice in Wonderland. She had a looking glass and she put her hand through it, and her hand went to the other side of forever. That is a wormhole.
But could we manipulate the very fabric of time and space?
If we have something called negative matter or negative energy, it might be possible to build a gateway to another universe, a gateway to another point in space or time. Now, of course, in science fiction, we have the dilithium crystals of Star Trek. People talk about spice. People talk about other exotic chemicals that will open these gateways. Well, I'm a physicist. To us, it's negative matter or negative energy. Negative energy we can actually create in the laboratory. It's already been done, but only in microscopic quantities. Negative matter we've never seen before. If we can find a negative matter meteorite in outer space, just perhaps, maybe we can harness it to open a gateway to another universe.
The only problem is the amount of energy required to punch a hole to the other side of the universe is impossible for us to achieve with our current technology.
The trick is to assemble enough positive and negative energy in order to rip open the fabric of space and time. That's really hard. We're talking about the energy of a black hole, the energy of a star, in order to bend time into a pretzel.
What do you mean it's impractical to go back in time? Can't make a wormhole. What's wrong with these eggheads? Okay, so traveling into the past might be a tad beyond our reach, but here's something surprising. Most physicists believe it's possible, relatively easy in fact, to travel into the future.
How do you exploit Einstein's theory of relativity to travel into the future? Well, it turns out it's not that hard to do. Now, it's hard from an engineering point of view. You just need a really fast spaceship, which we don't have. But if you had one, here's what you do. You just go on a long journey and come back home.
Remarkably, this is possible because time behaves differently when an object or person travels at high velocity. It's called time dilation.
If you move fast enough, your clock will disagree from a clock that's been left at home. A similar thing can happen if you spend a lot of time in a strong gravitational field, like near a black hole, for example.
This amazing feat has actually already been accomplished. Russian cosmonaut Sergei Krikalev has spent more time in space than any other human being. From 1988 to 2005, Krikalev spent 803 days orbiting the Earth at high speed. At times, Krikalev was traveling at 17,000 miles per hour. Nowhere near the speed of light, but fast enough to travel forward in time.
It's only about 1/50th of a second, so it's almost too small to even notice. But he has aged just a little bit less than, let's say, if he had had a twin brother who had stayed on the ground. He's just a little bit younger than his brother would have been.
Using this theory, it may be possible to travel thousands of years into the future.
Imagine traveling all the way around the circumference of the Milky Way galaxy, our galaxy. Now, it's very big. It's about 150,000 light years around. So it's going to take a long time. You start accelerating at a rate of 1g, which is the normal force of gravity that you feel just sitting here. So you have this very mild acceleration, but you keep it up long enough, you're eventually going very fast. When you get halfway around, you start decelerating, and after many, many more years, you end up back on Earth where you started from. Here's the thing. to someone who has stayed at home and just watched you go and is waiting for your return, they have a long wait because it's going to take 150,000 years before you come back. But for you, from your point of view, on board this spaceship, only 23 years will have passed.
So, although it seems impossible, time travel is, theoretically at least, real. And the Large Hadron Collider could yet witness science fiction become functioning science fact.
In some theories where there's extra dimensions of space, in addition to the 3 that we see, little compact, tiny dimensions, extra dimensions of space, there's a speculative idea that they may be able to make a mini black hole in the Large Hadron Collider.
So is it possible the mystery figure that appeared that night in Los Angeles was really a time traveler? Perhaps even from a future where science had finally answered the secrets of the universe and were now able to manipulate time? Could be.
We physicists believe that if time travel is possible, all the paradoxes can be resolved if a parallel reality opens up and there are no contradictions. You simply change the past of another universe. This also means that perhaps in the future, our descendants may have the energy and the ability to create a time machine. So one day, if somebody knocks on your door and claims to be your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter, don't slam the door.
Is that weird or what? A mysterious set of stone structures in rural New Hampshire. Could this be a place of pagan worship and human sacrifice thousands of years old?
The astronomical alignments are one of the key pieces of evidence the site is ancient.
Does this mean ancient Europeans crossed the Atlantic thousands of years before Columbus?
So it really does open up a whole different way to look at North American history.
What is this place? Who built it? And what could its existence mean for America?
Truth in history, it would seem, is a sliding scale. The facts that we know today may all crumble away with discoveries of tomorrow, and those discoveries are often to be uncovered in the most unlikely of places. For example, could an innocent-looking pile of rocks tucked away in the corner of a farmer's field in the northeastern United States challenge everything we think we know about American history? What if the first European to arrive in North America wasn't Christopher Columbus or even a Viking? What if, instead of coming to New England in search of religious freedom, the first European settlers came to practice human sacrifice?
In Salem, New Hampshire, a mysterious grouping of megalithic stones standing 14 feet high surround a compound that houses a maze of 8-foot-long chambers and crypts set into the ground. The centerpiece, a huge stone slab that looks like a sacrificial table. This is Dennis Stone. His family has owned the site for 3 generations, and he has an amazing theory. Stone believes that this is the oldest man-made structure in the entire United States.
America Stonehenge may be one of the more important archaeological sites in the Western Hemisphere. There are different theories of who built the site. If it is in fact ancient and was built by Old World people, this would demonstrate that people crossed the Atlantic Ocean a few thousand years before Christopher Columbus or even the Vikings came to America.
Sounds crazy, doesn't it? The very idea that explorers predating Columbus by millennia might have crossed the Atlantic and made America their home? Well, before you dismiss the idea, consider this. It was only in 1960 that the Norwegian archaeologist Anne Ingstad was ridiculed when she proposed her idea that Vikings had settled North America in the 12th century. But it turned out to be true. Ingstad's discovery changed history, and the Viking settlement she found
in Newfoundland, Canada, is now an official World Heritage Site. Could this structure have been built by mysterious ancient travelers? Stone believes similarities between his site and archaeological sites in Europe hold the key to uncovering the truth.
We have a couple of chambers here that are very reminiscent of chambers found in France, Ireland, Spain, the Netherlands. One of the purposes we know of is that they were used for astronomical alignments with the sun, moon, and stars. And there are just stone markers. The sun would rise or set over these stones, so the moon would do the same thing. And this may have been tied into the religious ceremonies, the longest day of the year, the shortest day of the year, or the equinoxes. And there's also stones that align with cross-quarter days, days in between the seasons. The ancient Celts and other cultures actually set up stones which would mark these times.
The Celts, a diverse group of tribes that dominated much of Central Europe until around 1600 years ago. Stone remnants of Celtic structures, including elaborate burial chambers, can be found all over Europe. It has also been suggested that the Celts were involved in the construction of England's most famous ancient megalith, Stonehenge, a site some believe was created as a giant astronomical tool, its stones aligned to the solstice positions of the sun and moon. Did Celts come and settle America 1,000 years before Columbus?
In the 1970s, Barry Fell, again a professor at Harvard, stumbled upon a stone carved here on site, and the kind of writing that was on the stone, something called Iberian Punic. The Iberian Peninsula area at that time housed the Celts.
David Brody is an amateur archaeological researcher. He supports the idea that the Celts, not Columbus, were the first Europeans to reach the New World.
We think of the Celts as being from Ireland, but actually they originated in Central Europe and then went down to the Iberian Peninsula. But it's the Celts leaving the Iberian Peninsula region that I think came over here and established the site at America's Stonehenge.
This place is becoming weirder and weirder by the minute. So who the heck was it hanging around these woods all that time ago? And what were they doing? Could this site in New England share the same purpose as the original Stonehenge in Old England? A prehistoric monument of huge, carefully aligned stones assembled by ancient Britons for some mysterious pagan purpose? If the Celts did build this American Stonehenge as a religious site, then Dennis Stone has some striking ideas as to what ceremonies would have been performed here.
I'm standing next to the sacrificial table. It's one of the main features at America's Stonehenge. This table measures about 9 feet in length, 6 feet in width, and it sits on 4 stone legs. On the surface of the stone, there's a rectangular cutout or a groove that's been made on the surface, and it has a little runoff. So if a ceremony of some type was taking place, a fluid could run through the channel and then run off the stone into a vase, perhaps.
Although little is directly known of the Celts' religious practices, the Romans who fought them, and even Julius Caesar himself, often described how Celtic druids or priests carried out human sacrifice to honor their many pagan gods. The discovery of various ancient sites of ritualized murder in Europe may support this. The stone table in Salem also has another even more bizarre feature Dennis Stone calls an oracle tube.
This tube goes through about 8 feet, comes out underneath the sacrificial table. The voice would project out under the table during a ceremony, perhaps, and people would hear the voice and think it was a god or spirit talking to them.
I am the god of the underworld. I accept your sacrifice. Remember, always obey the priest.
When we find these large, elaborate stone structures, historically, they were done to honor gods for religious purposes, whether it's the pyramids or Stonehenge in England or Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. When ancient man went to the effort to build something this elaborate, it was done for religious purposes. And again, that takes me back to the Celts, perhaps 500 BC. That's the type of thing that they did all over Europe at that time and would have done here if they came to America.
America settled by Iron Age Europeans. It's an explosive theory, but not one exactly shared by many experts.
research since the 1940s has shown there's a great deal of differences between what we find in Ireland and what is found at this site. There are major differences in the architectural styles. There are differences in the engineering of how the buildings are put together.
An expert in prehistoric stone structures, James Gage, also believes that an ancient civilization built this place, but based on carvings in the stone themselves, his theory is that the structure was created by a more local people, Native Americans.
First and foremost is the large number of Native American artifacts that have been found at the site. And these artifacts range from, scrapers and projectile points, stuff we normally expect, to paint cups and rubbing stones. This evidence also includes clay pottery that they were actually manufacturing on site. There was a small wetlands area where they were able to actually mine the clay, and adjacent to it they had a small area where they were making the pots and firing them. One of the more interesting features about this site is it has a number of peck grooves, chipped out stone basins, and they're all been created by pecking out the stone using a hammerstone. And this pecking technique is very distinctive to the Native Americans. The Celtic culture was a fairly advanced civilization. You had metal tools, they were making gold artifacts. We would expect them to use more advanced technology other than just simple hammerstones.
The Native American theory makes obvious sense, but not according to David Brody.
It is possible that the Native Americans did build the America Stonehenge site. It would have been out of the ordinary for them to have done so, so I'm not inclined to think they did. They didn't typically, Native Americans in this area of the country did not typically build with stone. They had stone tools and they used stone to build their hearths, but they didn't build these elaborate structures typically out of stone. Once in a while we see a sweat lodge, but there's too many of these chambers here. In addition, the Native American tribes, although a lot of their history hasn't wiped out in the New England region, they don't take ownership of this site like they take ownership of other sites that they believe they did build. So I'm not going to tell you that they didn't do it, but I think the weight of the evidence is more in favor of some kind of ancient seafaring European civilization.
So while these experts can't agree which ancient civilization built the American Stonehenge, another archaeologist, Kenny Feder, believes whoever is responsible wasn't ancient at all.
Celts in New England 3,000 years ago? I don't think so, but okay. Archaeological sites where people were so neat that they picked every stinking artifact up and left no physical evidence behind? Not bloody likely.
Okay, it looks like we're back to square one. So who could it have been that built those incredibly weird structures? Was it the Celts? Unlikely. The Native Americans? Maybe not. Well, how about another slightly less romantic theory? What if it was assembled by a couple of drunken 18th century farmers?
If America Stonehenge is what I think it is, which is 19th century idiosyncratic structures, that doesn't make it any less important than if it's a 3,000-year-old site with Celts traipsing around in southern New England. Makes it of different significance, but I don't think it makes it less significant. It just makes it different.
Feder's theory is the structures were constructed by the descendants of the Celts, the better-known European settlers that came in the centuries after Christopher Columbus, bringing with them traditional ways of building stone structures.
Yeah, damn right. They were Celts. But they were Celts from the 1800s and 1700s, because those are the people who moved here.
Good point, but can't the more recent Celtic immigration theory explain the existence of the site's most macabre and enigmatic-looking object? Why does American Stonehenge appear to have a sacrificial table?
Look at the names of the towns, for example, in New Hampshire, around where America Stonehenge is located, the towns and the counties. Places like Londonderry. Well, why is it called Londonderry? Because the people who lived here were from Great Britain. They were Celts. These stones are found actually throughout New England, so you're sort of left with a choice. Either there's this like widespread practice of human sacrifice throughout New England, or we got something else going on, and I think it's something else that's going on. If you Google lye stone or cider press stone, you'll actually come up with some antique sites. They'll sell you stones like that. The deal is, if you know something about historical technology, about historical process, we do know that the stones like that are found throughout New England. They were used for a number of kind of mundane purposes, not sacrificing people, but in fact making apple cider or producing lye soap. The deal is that an artifact like that, an object like that, is something that we, in the modern world, we suffer from kind of cultural amnesia. We don't press our own cider. We don't make lye soap anymore. And so the objects, the artifacts from that period that any little kid would be able to tell you, oh yeah, we use that for making soap. Today, it's mysterious.
So are the drainage grooves on the 4-ton stone table actually for apple juice, not human blood? It may be the most plausible theory, but the mystery of the American Stonehenge cannot be cleared up quite so neatly. Charcoal pits at the site have been carbon dated and believed to be more than 2,000 years old. And Dennis Stone still believes his site is proof that an ancient people commemorated the coming of the solstices here, exactly as they may have done at the real Stonehenge.
The astronomical alignments are one of the key pieces of evidence that the site is ancient. The alignments do not work today. They're off a certain amount due to the Earth's tilt changing. In 1977, we took 4 years' worth of survey data. We sent it to the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in Cambridge, Mass. They ran it through the computer, and they said that if these were used for astronomical purposes, they would work about 1800 BC, plus or minus about 200 years. We have taken carbon datings on the hilltop, about 16 of them. In the main site, which is where we're standing right now, the oldest carbon dating was 4,000 years old. This agrees pretty closely to the astronomical data and results.
American Stonehenge could be proof that ancient Europeans traveled to North America thousands of years before Columbus. Or it could be a rare example of Native American stone building. Or it's just a really weird apple cider factory built by colonial farmers. Only one thing is for certain. The origins and purpose of American Stonehenge remains a mystery. Is that weird? Or what? Most people don't believe this. But I have a real green thumb. The secret to my success? I talk to my plants, I stroke them, and I give them a little tender, loving care. Why? Because I believe plants, like humans, are emotional beings. They have feelings just like you and I do. They love, they fear, they can be affectionate, and they can communicate. You don't believe green matter has gray matter? No? Well, watch this. Of all the many different organisms that are on the planet Earth, common sense dictates that mammals are the most advanced, capable of thought, reasoning, and emotions. But shocking new evidence suggests that plants may possess these abilities as well. And even more mysterious, they may have the power of ESP. Is this science fiction? Or science fact? Researchers attempt to establish interspecies communication. Is that weird, or what? Our story begins in Italy, where Carlo Schignazzi runs a 24-acre vineyard in the Tuscan hills. A music lover, Carlo was well known to serenade his grape pickers with an accordion. But in 2002, Carlo would stumble upon the true amazing power music could have when, as an ecologically friendly way of controlling pests from ruining his crop, Shignazi placed loudspeakers all around his vineyard to play 24-hour-a-day classical music. The pests were frightened away, but that's not all. Something else happened, something bizarre. The grapevines nearest the speakers grew 50% larger than the rest of the crop, matured more quickly, and even grew towards the source of the music.
It's fantastic to see. It's impossible to believe. The bunches are 4 times more. For example, they leave 2 times more. So the sound is like light.
So why is this happening? Is there a logical explanation, or is the reason far stranger? Could the soaring sounds of Bach and Mozart's delicate ditties revolutionize the way we treat our greenery? Researchers discovered that popular tracks such as Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Waters and Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony improved milk yield in dairy cows by as much as 1 liter per day. Why? Because calming music was found to reduce stress in the animals. Happy moos equals more milk. Could something similar be happening with plants? Could relaxed grapes with impeccable musical taste ripen quicker? Could plants have an intelligence science has yet to fathom? Botanist Dr. Jaideep Mathur says that the grapevine's response to music can be simply explained.
Basically, we are talking about vibrations. Plants are able to exhibit primary perception, where they can pick up happenings from their surroundings, and that can be read out as electrical impulses. As far as classical music is concerned, perhaps there are certain tones, certain timbre, certain levels of vibration that plants are more responsive to in that particular music.
Sound waves are vibrations in the air made up of different frequencies. The vibrations caused by the sound of music can be felt by the plants in their leaves or in the soil. Research suggests that plants may respond to music by increasing the expression of the genes, stimulating growth. So do plants just feel music rather than hearing it? Is the perceived wrath of grapes or joy just a boring biological response based on sound vibrations? Maybe. But Susan Dudley, a plant evolutionary ecologist, has another theory for why Carlo's grapevines grow so dramatically. And it may have something to do with how the plants in the vineyards are related to each other.
Every plant has a mother and a father, and the vineyard in Tuscany could be doing better because they're planted next to their siblings. For some plants, we know the plants do better when they're planted next to their siblings. And what my research does is show a possible mechanism for that they're not producing these competitive behaviors when they're with their siblings. So that's a plausible theory.
To create a consistent grape, most vineyards use cuttings from healthy plants, then graft them onto rootstock. This means that often, most of the vines in a given field are genetically related clones.
I went looking to see whether plants could recognize who their relatives were and behave differently with those relatives. What we found is that plants respond differently to liquid in which other seedlings had been in. So you put a seedling in the liquid, you take it out, you put your test seedling in, and you measure it. And it will grow more roots if that first seedling was a stranger, but it won't grow more roots if that first seedling was a sibling. And we had a control where we just lifted them out, put them back in again. So we definitely see that there's something soluble, some kind of chemical maybe that the roots probably put into the liquid that they're responding to, but we don't know what it is.
Plants compete for limited resources like sunlight, nutrients, and water, meaning there are winners and losers in this equation. Dudley's research has shown that when certain plants grow beside their kin, they work together for mutual survival and are more likely to all do well.
With a winery, usually vintners are planting all the same kind. They're not planting very different kinds together, so rather than better sharing because they're different, they might be sharing better because they're less competitive with each other.
Okay. Maybe I am barking up the wrong tree. Sorry. Seriously. What if the grapes of Tuscany and plants in general don't ripen or respond or grow tall and healthy because they love music? What if it's because they love each other? But can this sibling explanation sufficiently solve the mystery in the Italian vineyard? Family ties may make the vines grow better, but why would only some vines grow toward the speakers? Could the answer be far stranger than anything even science fiction writers might imagine? Could, as many researchers believe, vines and other plants be sentient beings capable of displaying conscious choice?
I believe plants can sense. Now, whether they can sense precisely our thoughts or the thoughts of other animals around them really remains to be proven. So I wouldn't go so far as saying that, yeah, they have the ESP and everything. However, what I definitely can say is they would be influenced very easily by changes in their environment, and that maybe reflects to a certain extent the thought process. We do not know.
Jay Deep and his assistant Zach are going to put the sentient being theory to the test. They're going to hook up this plant to a state-of-the-art polygraph. Sensors will read the subtle changes in the plant's electrical activity to see how it responds to various stimuli. If there's a noticeable spike in the plant's electrical activity, then that would suggest that the plant can read human thoughts.
I'm absolutely curious about what is the outcome from this particular experiment, because it might actually be an opening for the way my own research direction that will move into. Because if there's a positive response, I would really love to follow that up in a more scientific manner.
For their first experiment, they're going to test what many gardeners believe to be a fact, that plants respond well to human touch.
Lightly brushing the leaves and the stems of the plant.
No, sorry, Zach.
But there's no response. Now they're going to attempt what few scientists have ever tried before.
Threatening thoughts.
They're going to see if plants have ESP.
No response so far?
That's all I got. Yeah. We haven't gotten any responses yet, eh?
Since there's no response, Jay Deep and Zach are going to raise the intensity of their next experiment. They're going to threaten the plant with violence.
Cut plant. Hold on. So as soon as you were on the way to cut it, there's a huge spike. That's really interesting because it was at a lower level, spiked up, came down, went up again, and then has now started resting at another level. So the spike actually comes prior to your action.
Amazingly, before he could cut the plant, there's a noticeable spike on the lie detector indicating a physiological response by the plant. That would suggest that the plant could read Zach's mind.
This was almost the perfect moment for a plant to have become anxious when you reached it with the scissors with a very clear intention, at least in your mind, unspoken. So, again, maybe we are looking at something real. Scientifically speaking, this hardly would count as a result unless we could repeat it multiple times. But the fact is, and it comes as a major surprise to me, because I was not expecting this at all. And we had already gone through one plant and looked at the other one and gone through different situations where we realized this is not happening. And then suddenly, when Zach moves in with a scissor, and I guess with a very clear intention of carrying the threat out, there is a very, very clear spike.
So, if human beings are ever going to prove plants are sentient or have ESP, more research needs to be done. If it's ever proven true, the implications would be enormous. It would shake the very foundations of our human existence and necessitate a dramatic change in the way we relate with this mysterious species. Is that weird or what? So, 3 weird mysteries. The multitude of even weirder possible explanations. A woman materializes from nowhere into an LA bathroom. Did she use a wormhole to travel through time? Did she travel faster than light speed? Is any of this possible? A mysterious stone structure in New England. Proof that the ancient Celts settled the United States? Was this built by Native Americans? Or was it created in more recent times as a booze-making factory? Vines in Italy seemingly respond to the sounds of Mozart. Are plants sentient beings with human feelings and desires? You decide. Join me next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird or what?
There is no doubt that we are living in a time of great opportunity and challenge on the planet. Consciousness wants to shift to a higher level of operation, one of light and love instead of our current state of darkness and fear. It's unlike any other time in history, and we are certainly privileged to be incarnate during this period when this massive change is underway. It is a time of expanding consciousness, a time of opening our hearts and minds to ideas that we never thought possible, such as time travel, teleportation, and life on nearby planets. A major trap that prolongs the existence of duality consciousness in ourselves and in society in general is our believing in and adherence to the matrix created and controlled consensual reality. This reality describes a physical world of lack, with humans competing with one another for scarce resources. It embodies the win-lose mentality of the old timeline, where survival of the most ruthless, the most uncaring, is a fact of life. This materialistic worldview enshrines the individual ego, its enhancement, and the accumulation of money and status as the only worthwhile human endeavor. Success at all costs is the credo in this crumbling reality. This system lacks a concrete morality, and whatever actions are necessary to enhance the success of the ego are acceptable, even if those actions damage others, the environment, or mankind in general. It also dictates strict conformance to social norms and severe punishment for those straying outside of the parameters of what is acceptable behavior or acceptable thought. Enslavement by the monetary system and fear of violence keeps this reality in place. This is the control matrix of the old timeline at its essence. Lurking just outside of this core structure is what is known as the margins. The mind control system of the matrix allows for thoughts and ideas to stray from the core into the margins, to give the illusion of freedom of thought. Marginal subjects are items like veganism, organic gardening, and some alternative healing techniques, and other ideas that won't affect the existence of the status quo or interfere with the profitability of a corporate endeavor, such as the pharmaceutical industry. Ideas may move from the margins to the core consensual reality and back to the margins, based upon the whims of the controllers and the corporate goals of the matrix. The forbidden zone is called the fringe. It is in this area where human consciousness can expand to what is possible and create new neural pathways to enhance learning and growth. Alfred was talking about fringe subjects, subjects of which knowledge is forbidden, and thought is considered frivolous, if not ridiculous. It is into the fringe that we must venture to expand our knowledge, and therefore foster the expansion of consciousness. Forbidding fringe knowledge keeps us trapped and will prolong the win-lose mentality, violence and separation of the duality consciousness. As Alfred states in his interview, on the new positive timeline, all will be known. But is this the cause or the effect of the shift of consciousness? Will all be known because this new timeline is unfolding? Or will the new timeline be facilitated by our individually and collectively exploring the fringe and finding out what's really happening? Logically, it will be a combination of both. Change will be facilitated by our exploration of what is possible, by exploring the fringe, and also by knowledge spontaneously emerging from behind the veil. We simply must be open to ideas outside of the trap of consensual reality. The bottom line is, don't be afraid of the fringe. Explore it. Play with it. Discard its ideas if found to be incorrect, and build on its ideas if they have validity. To be compatible with the new unity consciousness, you must have an open mind, capable of forging new neural pathways from new concepts to produce new ideas and solutions.